As a premier community in Hampton Roads, James City County strives to maintain a high quality of life for all citizens through sound fiscal management and legislative actions. In an ongoing effort to increase transparency, your Board of Supervisors holds public meetings to garner citizen input before making important decisions. Here is tonight's meeting agenda. Stay tuned. The Board of Supervisors meeting will begin shortly.
Kinds of stuff on your TV screen. I got one right here. Call this meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors to order. Mr. Stevens, if you would do the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hipple?
Here.
Mr. Hipple represents the Powhatan District and is vice chair to the board. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Larson represents the Berkeley District. Ms. Sadler?
Here.
Ms. Sadler represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon represents the Roberts District. Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower represents the Jamestown District and chair to the board. Sitting way to my left this evening is our attorney Adam Kinsman, and I'm Scott Stevens, County Administrator, and it is my pleasure to be clerk to the board. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This evening we will have a moment of silence and a Pledge of Allegiance afterwards, and it will be led by our participants from the ArC of Greater Williamsburg Daycare Day Support Program. And I would ask them to come forward and lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you would remain there for a minute, I'm going to come down. And I'd like to each one.
All right, I'd be happy to. All right, this is Laura Palmer. Drew Dayton. Hi. Yeah, you're Drew. Devin. Shake his hand. Devin, this is for you. Collins. Thank you. There you go. Fist pump. Come up the step here and get.
right now. Okay. And, ma'am, it'll be the second one. Okay. We will now go to presentations, and our first presentation this evening is retiree recognition for Captain Jeff Hall, the Fire Department. And Mr. Stevens will do the honors on that, and I will do the presentation of the certificate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, Board, this is a beginning for us in trying to do a little more recognition of our employees after they have served the county. So I want to thank Captain Hall for being our first one to receive this, or at least go through this, and we'll learn from this and move from there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Ash and ask them both to come up to the podium so we can see who we're talking about.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's a great honor to be here this evening to recognize Jeff Hall and his retirement. I'm going to read a brief narrative about Jeff. Jeff Hall began working for James City County Fire Department in August of 1983. For over 35 years, Jeff has proudly served our community and the fire service. In 1984, he became one of the founding members of the fire department dive team. Jeff was promoted to captain in 1994 and has served at 4 of the 5 fire stations as a captain and served as the department's training officer. In the past 35 years, Jeff has been and continues to be instrumental in developing and delivering many training classes here in James City County, regionally through the Regional Fire Academy, and statewide as an instructor for the Virginia Department of Fire programs, as well as the community college system. Jeff may retire, however, his legacy will remain in James City County Fire Department for decades through the people he has taught and inspired. And I know for me personally, Captain Hall was one of our instructors in the Fire Academy, made an impact on us that day, and has done so for many, many people since then. So, Jeff, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
We'll miss you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
What I'd like to do is welcome Jeff to come.
Fortunately, I didn't prepare anything. It's been great. A lot of people may not know this, but Ruth's husband, Greg, and I, we joined the fire service at the same time. The first fire I went to was with her husband. If you haven't met him, he's a very big man. And we were going into the front door, and I hesitated a little bit. He reached out, grabbed me by my air pack, pulled me in, and said, "I'm not going in without you." That's kind of been my motto my whole career as a leader. Nobody goes in by themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our next presentation, I would like to invite Pam McGregor from the ArC to come up and make a presentation to the board.
You want to make sure you get on the microphone
Get
too, though.
close to the microphone, yeah.
For the vast viewing audience at home.
Ms. McGregor, if you wanted to stand on this side, you could. Just be close to the mic. That way.
There you go.
All right, well, you can hear me now. First of all, it's really an honor for our clients to have been here tonight to lead the pledge. For those of you that are not familiar, the ArC of Greater Williamsburg has proudly served adults with disabilities in this community since 1976. The ArC is there when the school bus stops coming. And that is a tagline that we use because it denotes the fact that after age 22, special education ends. And for all those years of special ed and friendships and mentorships and learning that has happened, it comes to an abrupt halt. And the ArC has been providing programs for all these years. About 4 years ago, hard to believe we're going into our 4th year in March, we started a day program. We call it ArC of Abilities. Because what you find out about the people in this town that I have the privilege to serve, not only are they the nicest people in town, but they have tremendous gifts to share. And at the day program, we have a continuation of life skills training, continuing education. Some go on and work in the community. There are other clients that we serve. We have over 300 families in this community that go on to college. But what we're hoping to do is in this community, with thanking the James City County Board of Supervisors and partners that we have in this community, raising the awareness of all these amazing people and the things that they can do. We have non-paid internships where we're working in this community, and I encourage all of you to go on our website, thearcgw.org, and learn a little bit more about us. Give us a call if you want to volunteer, if you want to learn more about the day program and come and see us in action. We wholeheartedly invite you. But let me turn my attention back to our leaders here. Leadership is something that I don't think you get told thank you enough for. So thank you on behalf of the ArC for this support that we've been given. Please extend this thank you to the James City County Parks and Recreation. John Carnivax and his team do a tremendous job. Our program is at the Abram Frink Community Center. If you have not already visited, I know Mr. McLennan has, come and see us in action. It's pretty impressive. They work in that community garden. They volunteer at James River Elementary School. They have art instruction at the Abby Aldrich Museum. They have a bowling league. They're living their lives. But every client that we serve should have this opportunity. So for the people that we've elected to serve us, we thank you, and we encourage all the people that are standing behind me, my fellow citizens, to get to know the ArC and help us make a bigger impact of the people that I love so much. And thank you for this privilege. Our clients will be talking about this for years. So have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to probably the most awaited part of the evening, public comment. We have first speaker is Roseanne Bradeen. Is Roseanne here? Okay, we had, I think that was done online, so if she's not here yet, I'll put that back to the bottom. The next speaker will be Jack Fowler.
Good evening. Jack Fowler, 109 Wilderness Lane. Know all of you. It's been quite a while since I've been here. My wife came to me in September almost crying, and she said, honey, I can't go out the door without the mosquitoes eating me alive. 10 years I've been standing here off and on. The first time she ever asked me to do anything. Just had our 55th anniversary 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'm here. May not wish I was, but we're going to go back. We're going to talk one thing about Rochambeau. I live off Rochambeau. There are the multitude of problems that I brought up repeatedly.
You fix your microphone. We can't hear you.
Yeah. There.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I brought up repeatedly over the years. They still haven't been done. I've been to the county, and a lot of things have been done. I would like to bring up Christy Parrish, code compliance. I've spoke of her before. She puts forth 110%, and she still does. She either does something or she'll tell me why. I would like to mention Mr. Stevens. Until this afternoon, I've never met him. He's brand new. And sir, until tomorrow, you're not responsible or involved in what I have to say. 10 years ago, we had a superintendent, he had, sent me a registered letter saying, please do not attend any more meetings or talk to any of my staff. Did that tell you why things didn't get done? You had one after that. He told staff, don't do anything that he talks to you about. And he would not speak with me. And there's other people he would not speak with. I saw in the paper the two gentlemen here want to know why he's not here anymore. He's not here anymore because he would not talk to the citizens of this county. So we answer that question. Mr. Hill, think the world of him. I stopped coming here because of Christy Parrish and him and for my respect for them. But when Mama asked me to come back, I'm here. Rochambeau is a complete disaster. Too wide, dangerous hole. There's one hole 18 inches deep. If you run off the road, you're into it, baby. It goes up down like a washboard. We have a swamp. Tomorrow, legal action from the county will start on that. That's where my mosquitoes are. If you go on past that, we live in a triangle. York County, Williamsburg, and James City County. I have a multitude of things here. Mr. Stevens had agreed to go with me to take a look. I think you, Mr. Hipple, is going to go do the same thing. We don't just have limbs in our bar ditches. We have trees. It's been a month since we had a snow, and we're going to have another one Sunday. We have potholes, the side of roads that are falling and caving in. 3 or 4 years ago, you wanted to extend Moortown Road. I said then, why do you want to build another road? You can't keep up the ones you've got, and you still don't. So I've got a lot of photographs. If any of you want to see it, anybody in this audience wants to see it when it's over, I'll be glad to show you. My answer to this is, and I got an email from Mr. Hill, the last one in April 2 years ago. Jack, we're doing all we can. We're a county, they're a state. All we can do is ask VDOT to do things. But it's not just that they haven't done things. The county is just responsible. You haven't responded to legal and lawful things that I and other people have brought forward to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Our next speaker is, oh, and by the way, I did neglect to mention before, when you come to speak at public comment, please start out with your name and address, and we do have a 5-minute limit, and the lights on the podium will give you when you get close to the end. Is it Mark or Marge Schilling? Marge, there we go. Mary. Whether it's your writing or my reading.
Good evening. I am prepared to speak on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Williamsburg area in support of the Equal Rights Amendment, and specifically to the amendment of the James City County legislative package of requests to the General Assembly to include the ratification of the ERA. But first, a bit of history. Proposed by the National Women's Political Party in 1923, the Equal Rights Amendment, spurred by the feminist movement of the 60s, was finally introduced into Congress. In October 71, the House passed the amendment. The Senate followed in 72, requiring ratification by 38 states. In less than 2 months after the congressional passage, the League of Women Voters of the United States, in May of 72, overwhelmingly approved support of the ERA at its biennial convention. The original deadline for state ratification was extended until 1982, at which time the number of states ratifying fell short by 3. Fast forward to 2018. The nearly 1,000 members on the floor of the Biennial Convention virtually unanimously reaffirmed the importance of the ERA by voting to make it, once again, a priority position. In the past several years, Nevada and Illinois have passed ratification. So what is needed now for ratification is by one more state. The Commonwealth of Virginia is in a position to become that 38th and final state required to ratify the ERA. The Commonwealth, however, should not ratify the ERA simply to have that distinction. We should ratify the ERA because of what it will do for fairness and justice in our society, and because it is the right thing to do. The American Bar Association, who says it best, the Equal Rights Amendment would establish that gender equality under the law is a fundamental and irrevocable tenet of our society, protected by the highest law of the land. The ERA would require all judges to apply the highest standard of scrutiny when deciding cases in sex discrimination. Judges would use the same standard of review in sex discrimination, which they now use in deciding cases based on race, religion, and national origin. Finally, the ERA would protect and reinvigorate enforcement of existing gender equity laws and sex discrimination laws, which are otherwise vulnerable because they are not grounded in the Constitution. A recent survey by Christopher Newport University's Wasson Center for Public Policy found that an overwhelming majority of Virginians, 81%, that's 81%, in favor of ratification of the amendment by the General Assembly in this upcoming session. The support for ratification is truly bipartisan. Now is the time, and it is the right thing to do. I end on a personal note. In 1970, my mother-in-law, an active member of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, gave me a necklace with the acronym ERA connected to a gold chain. The House had just passed the amendment, then in 71, the Senate in 72, and Wisconsin very quickly ratified it within about 4 months. For many years, my necklace languished in my jewelry box. 3 years ago, I pulled it out of its place of hiding, and since then, I have worn it for important events with the League of Women Voters. I am wearing it this evening. My hope is that the activism of women and their allies across Virginia and action taken by cities, counties like James City County, to be precise, and municipalities across the Commonwealth will lead to the final ratification by the General Assembly of Virginia.
Schilling, your time has expired, so thank you. And Ms. Radine, since you weren't here, you were first on the speaking list. I just moved yours to the back of the queue, if you don't mind. The next speaker is Christine Payne.
Good evening. My name is Christine Payne, and my address is 2689 Jockey's Neck Trail in the county. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Peninsula Progressive Network and the 4 generations of women and girls in my own family to ask the board to add the ratification of Virginia's Equal Rights Amendment to our legislative packet to go to the General Assembly. And I would also like to ask at this time for those in the audience who support the Equal Rights Amendment to please stand and be acknowledged. Thank you. Equal rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. I heard those words when I was 10 years old. That's when states started ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. I remember the excitement of my mother and grandmother's generations at the prospect of finally codifying gender equality into our U.S. Constitution. That was 46 years ago. I was a little disappointed to hear that Virginia was not among the original states to ratify. In the past, our Commonwealth has been slow to find its way forward on a number of important issues. We were lagging behind other states to give women the right to vote. We were slow to end poll taxes, and we were originally reticent to integrating our public schools and approving of interracial marriage. Now we have a historic opportunity to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment within our state and be the 38th and final state needed for ratification. This is the civil rights issue of our time. Gender discrimination against women is certainly not protected with the same strict scrutiny that the 14th Amendment applies for women, for people of race, religion, or country of origin. Right now, the sexes are protected with a patchwork of rules and laws that vary from state to state, laws that can be abridged, changed, or in the recent case of the Violence Against Women Act, be allowed to expire. Gender equality is an integral part of our economic well-being. Right now, women still make about 80 cents on a man's dollar, and women of color make significantly less. When we raise everyone up, when we protect their economic well-being, we all benefit as a community. Major accounting firms have found a specific correlation between gender equality and increased net corporate profits. And they support the notion that equality of rights promotes growth in GDP. We've enshrined gender equality in our own state constitution for 48 years. When we don't ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, it's antithetical to our own state's values. Joining the other counties and cities who have already ratified or who have already approved of ERA's ratification this year speaks to our own locality's intent to raise the visibility of this important issue. Equal Rights Amendment was first proposed by the Republican Party and currently, as Mary Schilling said, is supported by a wide spectrum of political and private citizens. I won't quote the Wasson Center report, but I'll tell you that our current climate is very politically polarizing. And if we were to elevate a consensus issue such as this, we would demonstrate some much needed collegiality and also the merits of bipartisan cooperation. We can do that. We can set that example. We stand here tonight on the shoulders of the women and men who for generations have fought for gender equality because it's the right thing to do. I hope that you will all stand with us. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeanette Potter.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette Potter. I live at 4796 Regents Park, which is in the Powhatan District of James City County. I am a retired WJCC school teacher and co-founded Williamsburg JCC Indivisible in January of 2017. I am here to urge you to support Virginia's ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Before I get started on my remarks, I'm wearing an VA Ratify ERA button today for my grandchildren. The first one I wore in 1972 for myself. This is ridiculous. Virginia has for years been on the wrong side of history. With regards to women's rights, Virginia did not ratify the 19th Amendment, providing women the right to vote until 1952. It had been the law of the land and in our Constitution for a full 32 years before Virginia's legislators ratified this amendment. Virginia was also late to ratify the 24th Amendment, which declared an end to poll taxes. Virginia led massive resistance, and some parts of the state chose to close school districts rather than integrate children's classrooms. Virginia was on the sad side of history in Loving versus Virginia, where our state had outlawed interracial marriage. Virginia's law was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Virginia also spent millions of dollars to keep women out of VMI, a state-funded school. It was only as recently as 1997 that all Virginians were finally eligible to attend any state-funded school in Virginia. It is time we step out of the shadows of the past. Virginia is better than these stories would portray. Some state will be the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, and Virginia has the historical opportunity to be that state, be on the right side of history this time around. The historic triangle was the starting point of the Big Purple VA Ratify ERA bus tour, and the statewide ERA Women's March will take place here on January 19th. You can help Virginia make history once again by supporting ERA ratification. I recently met a man who remarked on my Indivisible and Tim Kaine bumper stickers. He told me he had a MAGA hat in his car. We started to talk, that thing people used to do. As we talked about issues, we discovered we weren't that far apart on a lot of things. So I asked him how he stood on the ERA. Being a young man in his early 40s, he said he wasn't familiar with it. And I told him that it simply states that equality of rights under the law shall not be abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. And he looked at me very puzzled and he said, well, who would have a problem with that? Exactly. Who would have a problem with that? Thank you.
Brennan. This thing's not coming on. I'm sorry. Can you hear me there? Okay.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ann Brennan, 159 Lakewood Drive, Williamsburg, 23185. I, too, speak in support of the Equal Rights Amendment and a proclamation for you to sign and support as well. Our country is just over 240 years old, yet it's been less than 100 years since women have had the right to vote. Less than 50 years since women have had the right, now under attack, to make decisions about their own bodies. It is time that women share the same full rights that men have in this country. Women comprise just over 50% of the U.S. population, yet do not have the same level of strict legal protection that men do. And that is why the ERA is needed and not redundant. We need the ERA so women and men can be equal in the eyes of the law, regardless of which state in which they may live, to have the ability to make decisions about themselves, receive equal pay for equal work, not to suffer pregnancy discrimination in the workplace, discrimination in the job selection area, to receive complete health care coverage as well as work to prevent violence against women who suffer at least 90% of all sexual crimes. Those, among other reasons, are why the ERA is needed. I lived and worked in D.C. in the 1970s, and it was there that I learned who Gloria Steinem, leader in the feminist movement, and Phyllis Schlafly, leader of the anti-ERA movement, were. Their views opened my eyes to an argument I never knew existed. When my new husband and I walked home together, I remember talking to him about the Senate vote that had occurred that would require the states to ratify and therefore establish a new amendment to the Constitution. That was pretty exciting to me. When I asked my husband what he thought about the idea of an ERA, his response was, couldn't hurt, but some thought it could hurt, and the ERA move to ratification stumbled. Fear moved in, and two of the biggest fears focused on the belief that abortion rights would expand, though the rate of abortions has been declining for decades, and that women would be drafted into the military. At present, we have no draft, and women have served in the military since the Revolutionary War. Those fears moved in and halted the ERA's ratification progress. While the first 36 states ratified the amendment in relatively short order, it was the straggling states, Virginia among them, that needed a better understanding of the other, women. Now, only one more state is needed to ratify the amendment. Virginia is that state. Virginia needs to cap this ratification. The history of this country is in large part due to the work of men from Virginia. Virginians were educated here in Williamsburg, wrote the Constitution, argued over its content, and held state and federal offices in an effort to create and maintain this new country they, along with other impressive men, had created. Independence from Great Britain did not mean independence for white men only. We can provide independence for all Americans without fear of losing our own individual liberty. There's plenty to go around. I took my daughter on a women's rights march in Colorado in 1985 when we lived there. Since living here, I've taken my daughter and my granddaughter on a march, right down Dog Street in support of women's rights. Education is a lifelong endeavor, and so it seems is the effort to include women in the Constitution. And until women are firmly inducted into the Constitution, as well as included into the Constitution, women will not have equality in this country. How many more generations of women must be born and pass before women's rights are included among the great amendments of our Constitution? Sign the proclamation and let it be known that you and those you represent can bravely ratify the ERA for Virginia and America, if for no other reason than it's the right thing to do for an enlightened people. Thank you.
Jay Everson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay Everson, 103 Branscombe Boulevard in Mrs. Larson's district. There's been a lot of talk here about adding this to the ERA to your legislative agenda. At the end of each year, you put together topics that, because of the Dillon rule, that you cannot address without state allowing it to happen, and you meet with the representatives to make your case. Such things as the dog issue out in Colonial Heritage. This is an issue here that has nothing to do with what's going on in James City County. And the reason it has nothing to do with it is that it's already in our Constitution in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's in Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 11. It says, in part, because it's got some stuff about takings before this, the right to be free from governmental discrimination upon the basis of religious conviction, race, color, sex, or national origin shall not be abridged, except for the mere separation of the sexes shall not be considered discrimination. That's directly from our Constitution. This is a moot point as far as Virginia goes. We already have this in Virginia. So James City County already comes under those provisions of our state constitution, since small power rests at the state level, not at the local level. The second thing is here that I know there's a lot of talk here about the 38th state. Back during the extension of the ERA to May of 1982, the state of Idaho rescinded their ratification of the ERA. The National Organization of Women sued the state of Idaho. And subsequently, after the extension expired, the Supreme Court, in an unsigned order, determined that this was moot, a moot point, and that the ratification process was over. That's what it says. I sent it to some of you. So this idea that you could pass it and all of a sudden you've got your 38th state is not really accurate. The constitutional question at the time that was not addressed by the Supreme Court is the fact that a constitutional amendment requires 2/3 vote of the Congress, both houses of Congress. The extension was by a majority, not by 2/3. That constitutional question has not been addressed by the Supreme Court. So it would appear to me, based on their order of in the early 80s, that this process is going to have to start over again. And this all sounds real good. It all sounds wonderful. But as far as James City County goes, we already have we're already in our Constitution. You cannot discriminate on the basis of sex in the Commonwealth. You can't do it. So the reason for this board to send that forward when it's a moot question in terms of the citizens of James City County makes no sense to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, next speaker is Mr. Mark Downey.
Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Dr. Mark Downey at 121 Horseshoe Drive in York County. I'm here today as a pediatrician, father, also intend to run for the Democratic nomination for the 96th District, House District, which serves part of James City County, so I want to introduce myself to the board as well. But I want to speak briefly about what my passion is, and that's taking care of children. And I know a lot of the folks, previous speakers, have spoken about their parents and grandparents that have fought for equal rights for women. But I'm here as a pediatrician to fight for the future generations and the children that I see every day, thousands of children I see every day, that I want to be able to go to sleep at night saying I did everything I could for them to make sure that they are treated equally under the law based on their sex and gender. So I'm not going to take the 5 minutes, but I just wanted to put my comments out there for the board to consider and encourage you to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Chris Henderson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Chris Henderson, 101 Keystone in the Jamestown District. I would like to begin by, first of all, wishing everyone a Happy New Year. 2019 is full of promise and opportunity, and I hope that everyone has a healthy and fulfilling new year. And Mr. Eisenhower, I congratulate you on your appointment as the chair. It is an important position in our community, and I hope that you will exercise proper discretion and restraint and support of citizen participation, which is the key for good self-governance. I would also like to welcome our new county administrator. I've not had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Stevens. I've heard lots of great things about him, and I certainly want to welcome you to James City County. Not been here for about 6 months since the last time I have addressed this body. And as a regular attendee and commenter, I want to encourage the board to look at your schedule again because it prevents citizens like me from addressing you on a regular basis. The timing of this meeting at 5 p.m. is a hardship and places a significant burden on working people in James City County. As you peruse the room, there are probably not that many people here that are full-time employed or have young children at home, as I do, or used to. Now my son is in college, but anyway, it is a burden, and it is important for James City County government to hear from all of its citizens, not just those that have the opportunity to come at 5 o'clock when most business people are still wrapping up affairs or trying to make it here. So I want to encourage you to conduct your meetings to allow maximum participation so that you can hear from all citizens and get the most input that you can. I hope that we can all agree that robust citizen participation is a good thing. And therefore, I want to call on you to amend your meeting structure to move this meeting to 6 p.m. and to allow 2 periods of public comment, one at the beginning and one at the end, just as it used to be before it was restructured several years ago. I also want to let you know about a recent loss in our community. Phil Richardson passed away on Christmas Day. Many of you know or knew Phil. He was a native son of James City County. He was 91 years old. And as you look around James City County today, Phil's fingerprints are in many areas of this community. Phil was involved in Newtown and owned a significant portion of that land. Phil was instrumental in the Monticello widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes during the initial construction. Phil owned land that is now part of Ford's Colony. He owned land over the Miller Farm on Old Town Road at Long Hill. And Phil's fingerprints are really all over this community, and he is a significant player in the development of this community. And I would like for this board and this community to recognize Phil's contribution to James City County and its progress. And I know that some things are in the works, but I would like for you to amend your legislative package to support naming the bridge on Old Town Road over 199 in Phil's honor. That is an important piece of roadway there because it was adjacent to Phil's farm, the Miller Farm, where Williamsburg Plantation is currently located. And I know that would mean a lot to Phil's family and to his many friends in this community to recognize Phil's contribution as we have done for others in this area. With regard to tonight's proceedings and its board consideration for the legislative package to include an endorsement of the ERA, I think it's a terrible idea. And not that I don't support equal rights, I just think it's above your pay grade and it's going to be decisions made by others. There could be unintended consequences for institutions that we hold dear, like our churches, and there will be no winners in a debate from a vote like this, because some people will be ecstatic and some will be deeply offended. And I just don't think that because this body has an opportunity to vote on it, it should do so. And I would ask you to exercise some restraint in that regard, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Next speaker is Barbara Henry.
Good afternoon, Chairman Eisenhower, members of the board, Mr. Stevens. Barbara Henry, 141 Devon Road. I came here this afternoon to request the board to vote no on the support of House Resolution 579. I must say it is absurd for the county to be voting on the support of an equal rights amendment, as this is a matter for state and federal consideration. And the time wasted voting on an equal rights amendment that has expired since June of 1982 is even more unreasonable. It was never ratified, either within the original or the extended time limit, and it expired June 30th of 1982. This amendment you are voting on would have to be proposed anew by a 2/3 vote of each house. Let me repeat that. This amendment you are voting on would have to be proposed anew by a 2/3 vote of each house. So what you are voting on is no longer pending. It is indeed a ruse. I strongly oppose the endorsing of this resolution and request the board to vote no. Voters should certainly insist that the General Assembly not waste time on a dead equal rights amendment. End of comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. The next speaker is Joseph Swanenberg.
Good evening, board members. Joseph Swanenberg, 3026 The Point Drive. Welcome, Mr. Stevens. Hope I get an opportunity to meet you. I am requesting or asking the board to consider voting no on the amendment regarding the equal rights. Certainly based on the comments by an early person, Jay, when he spoke about what we have already in our state constitution, it looks like we're trying to provide a solution so we can go look for problems. It's already there. It's done. It's taken care of. What this board is charged with is dealing with things that happen here locally, whether it's the budget, whether it's roads, whether it's emergency services, whether it's schools. This is something that should be put to the legislators at the state level and at the federal level. This is not something we should be running around chasing fires over. We got pigs running around the county. How much money has that cost us? So things like that actually pertain to what we should be addressing, although it's a bit petty talking about a pig, but quite honestly, what did that pig cost us for what we had to do to chase the darn thing down? Where does that money come from? So this is a solution looking for a problem. Secondly, on it very possibly can affect the churches all across the state and or all across the country, and make churches put churches in a position where they will no longer have their tax-exempt status. It's a very, very real possibility. That's probably the most concerning part out of all of this. It could have very detrimental, drastic effects on our country and on our society as we know it. And once again, I say this is better left to the state and federal officials. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Warrenberg. And the last speaker will be Ms. Roseanne Radine.
Roseanne Radine, 4700 President's Court. Good evening, and hello to Mr. Stevens. I haven't met you before. I'm here to say please vote no on this resolution. As many people have already stated that are against voting for it, it's really a moot question because the General Assembly has said that this is really, it's outdated. The original 1972 ERA, and only such amendment was ever passed by Congress, is no longer pending on the states. But I wanted to speak about it anyway, because I did read up on what it had contained, and I find it common sense that nobody in this room should be supporting this. Not just the board, but every single citizen in this room should be vehemently against it. I'm getting sick and tired of feeling that I am no longer safe and free in my own country, that I am not a woman. I was born a woman, and I have all the parts that are supposed to be there. I'm concerned with the onslaught and imposition of deceptive and erroneous buzzword-named laws being considered that will expunge laws that actually do protect me. Our Constitution, our God-given rights, our liberties, our pursuits of happiness, our national sovereignty and free markets, and the values that we hold so dear in America are under vicious attack. You are here, we are here, and so here are some of the things which you may not realize were contained in this original ERA. If you did adequate research, you would find out. And Ruth Ginsburg said that this ERA would affect nearly 800 federal laws if it were enacted. A few reasons to react against this are: the buzzword equal rights misleads the public. The ERA is not about equal rights for women, or anyone really. If it were, it would duplicate the 14th and 5th Amendments of our Constitution. Number two, the ERA enshrines abortion by giving a right to taxpayer-funded abortions. Why? Because abortions would be deemed medically necessary, just like procedures sought by men, forcing the state to fund them under Medicaid. And our state does not need any more Medicaid funding than we already have. We're already in severe problems because of it. Three, the ERA will strip churches of their tax-exempt status if their doctrines, policies, or practices, including male-only clergy, which constitutes sex discrimination. Guess which church that would mostly influence. Number four, It jeopardizes privacy and safety since traditional male and female domestic abuse shelters, bathrooms, locker rooms, nursing homes would be eliminated because women and men must be treated as indistinguishable. Reminds me of Alfred Hitchcock's Pig-Faced People, if you know that one. Everybody had to look the same because they were so beautiful, but they looked like pigs. And we just talked about pigs. Number 5, it increases auto and life insurance for women. Really, because men and women have to have the same price structure. It nullifies the protection for women, and it would permit males and females to compete for inclusion on the same sports teams. Number 7, it threatens religious liberty and conscience. Courts would be empowered to define sex and equality of rights. Courts could grant special legal rights to the people on the basis of their gender identity. Special privileges. Courts giving privileges. Interesting. More by courts. Transfers more power to the federal government. Requires an integrated prison system. Integrated prison. Male and female prisoners would likely be integrated, resulting in very dangerous conditions, especially for women. 10, end Social Security benefits for spouses because men should not be burdened with having to pay for their babies. 11, forces women into combat. Not only would women, including mothers, be subject to the draft, but the military would be compelled to place them in combat units alongside men. Equality of right under the law shall not be denied on account of sex. It eliminates child support and relieves fathers of that primary responsibility. It invalidates legal privacy protections for GID people using bathrooms, locker rooms, dressing rooms, and fails to prevent unfairness towards women in any new way beyond existing law. No fairness given to them more than we have already under our Constitution. So, that's it. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radine. I'm not sure what you're addressing, but I'll be glad to talk to you after the meeting about it. We have always let people speak as much as they would like. We don't have a 30-minute.
Mr. Eisenhower, I think at an earlier point, a different set of rules applied at a time when we had a public comment period at the beginning and the end of the meeting.
And the end.
But those rules were changed.
Yeah. Since we only have one comment period, we allow it to continue until people have finished. All of our speakers have finished speaking. So, okay. The next order of business on our agenda is the consent calendar, and we have on this the minutes adoption from our, I believe, was our December meeting?
Right, December 12th.
The appointment of the Assistant Fire Marshal and authorization for fire prevention powers, and a grant award, Commonwealth Attorney V-Stop Grant Program Fund, $59,779. And we'll look to the board for
Mr. Chairman, if no one else wants to pull any of these items, I would move the consent calendar with the minor amendment that under the minutes of our December meeting, under the section labeled Board Requests and Directives, that in the second line, the words Mayfield Farms be replaced with Mainland Farm.
Okay. With that one editorial change, we have a motion.
I just didn't know if the Assistant Fire Marshal appointee was here. Don't think so. Okay.
I don't know. Chief Ash was here earlier.
Chief Ash. Okay.
He's not. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Stevens.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hipple?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Okay. We are past no public hearings this evening. That will be next month. Board considerations. Our first one is the amendment to the legislative agenda to support ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Mr. Kinsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was lucky enough to be the one to put this into the system. I have no comment other than if you desire to adopt such an amendment, resolutions in your packet for that purpose.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let me begin. I would move the resolution that's contained in our packet that would add ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment as a recommended policy for the Virginia General Assembly as part of our legislative program. I do so because I think it meets a number of important objectives. Some would say, well, this is just a symbolic gesture, and I would agree that it is a symbolic gesture, but not just a symbolic gesture, that ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment would send a clear message about the significance of Virginia as one of the states within the nation endorsing the concept of constitutional protection for citizens regardless of sex or gender. Secondly, the question is sometimes raised about does it really matter? And I think the answer is clear there that this would change the status of issues relating to protection of equal rights regardless of sex to a higher standard of protection under the legal system. And so from that perspective, I think it's extremely important for the ratification to occur. And then we've heard a number of suggestions that, well, maybe the issue is moot, maybe the ERA ultimately will not be ratified because of action that Virginia might take. Maybe Virginia won't take the action. Does Virginia need to take the action because we already have a constitutional provision? And to those I would say, first of all, Virginia citizens are affected by national policy, and Virginia citizens may be discriminated against outside of the Commonwealth of Virginia or under jurisdiction that relates to the national government and not necessarily the state government. I think we have a long tradition of expressing our opinion about issues that are going to be undertaken by the state legislature, even though they are not directly related to James City County. But I think that citizens in James City County have clearly indicated their support for this particular action. In terms of the question of whether this is moot because the ratification period has expired, I think that is an open question. And should the General Assembly ratify this year or in the future, then there would almost certainly be a legal challenge to the ratification, and there would be an opportunity for that issue to be addressed. But whether or not the ratification is found to be valid, I think it's important for us to continue to express our support for the principle of enshrining equality of rights in the Constitution. It may be that ultimately this would result in having to go through the entire process again. But I think that it's important to take this step now to signal our intention to do so. Hopefully, a determination will be made by Congress that the ratification would be acceptable. We've had constitutional amendments that have taken 200 plus years to be ratified. And it is a discretionary act by Congress whether or not they put on a time limit for ratification. The Congress has usually not done so when they've considered constitutional amendments. So for all those reasons, I think it's important for us to take the step of endorsing ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, including this in our legislative packet. Now, I will say about this that I don't for a minute want to suggest that people who don't support this action in some way or another don't support equality. I think we have different perspectives on a number of issues, and I appreciate the spirit in which people have come forward to express their points of view. We can disagree about that, about the final determination, but I very much appreciate the fact that people have clearly explained their perspective, asked respectfully for their position to be supported, and now the board will take an action based on our own best judgments. And I thank my fellow board members for being willing to undertake this consideration tonight. Thank you.
I guess I'll lead off with comments.
I feel we're not in our lane with what we do here in James City County as far as the Board of Supervisors. I think this is something that should be in the General Assembly. It shouldn't be up to the James City County Board to make a recommendation one way or the other. I've asked a lot of ladies, do they feel that they don't have rights or not equal to a man? And I may have been asking the wrong ones, but everyone I asked said they do. Well, no, please, excuse me, but I've let y'all talk. Now it's my turn, and I will be able to have the seat. Thank you. Now, there may be some that agree and disagree, and that's okay. That's why we have these forums, and that's why we respect each other. And I respect your opinion on whether you will agree or disagree with my opinion. I don't think this is something that we should be concentrating in, putting our efforts in right now in James City County, as far as we should be looking at what we can do in our county to improve our county. I want to get out and take care of the streets, take care of the roads, take care of the trees, take care of the snow, take care of all the things our citizens need every day in James City County. There's the levels above me that are going to make this decision. I'm not going to make this decision. They're going to make the decision for us. One way or the other, they're going to move this forward and they're going to make a decision. And that's why they're at the level they are and why I'm at the level I am representing the citizens. I'm the guy on the ground level trying to make sure y'all have everything and our schools have everything we need in James City County. We work very well as a board together. I know there were some comments talked about, the differences, and this is a very unique board as far as the differences each and every one of us have. I mean, we have from one end of the spectrum to the other. And it works very good because we represent the citizens out there. I had more emails against it than I had for it. And tonight, I looked, and I know a couple of them were groups, but the speakers, there was 4 for and 5 against. And that's not saying that doesn't represent everything in the county, but I try to follow it and watch closely who's for and who's against and where the main core citizens are. But I do think this is a General Assembly issue. They're going to make the final decision on it. What I want to make is the final decisions on what affects us every day and what we can apply in James City County to put on the ground to work for us, and from clearing trees that are clogging our roadways to making sure that no one's speeding through a school zone, making sure our officers and our firefighters and EMS are protected. Those are the items I want to concentrate on. I don't feel this is a board decision that should be made. I think this is each one of us can make our own recommendations. The same thing we did with the Senate bill. We made our recommendations of what we thought. We didn't take a stance on it as a board, as a vote. I think this is the same item, same way we should take on this one. If we feel in our hearts that we want to do something more, then we write letters just like our citizens do. And we keep our concentration on what helps the citizens on a day-to-day living in James City County.
Thank you. I would just say that, first of all, I don't think this is a partisan issue. Someone said it's nonpartisan, or it's really just simply not partisan. It's equality for me. And I want to keep this really simple. I have a son and 2 daughters. And for me, it's to ensure equality pay and career opportunities for all 3 of them. And that's why I'm supporting it. I certainly respect colleagues that feel differently. You are correct. It is at the General Assembly, but we've made an agreement to bring it here to vote on adding it to our legislative agenda this evening. And so that's what we're going to do. I would urge those of you that spoke on both sides to, and maybe perhaps you already have, but make sure that you get involved on the General Assembly. I would just add that I received, in fact, last night at 11 o'clock, somebody called my office, and my office is my phone, so to let me know how they felt. So there was passion on both sides of emails and phone calls that I received. And there were several words that were said on both sides about praying for the right thing and for doing something for their children. So there's a lot that we all agree on. There's fundamentally some things that we don't, but you know, when we can have civil discourse about it, it makes us a much better country. And we'll walk out of here tonight with some of us agreeing and some of us not. But I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation. I think it's really important to show our children that it's something that we're willing to talk about. It may not be anything that we can change here on this level, but it is something that we're willing to tackle, in agreement or not in agreement. So, thank you.
I would just like to say that I would like to thank everyone who's taken the time to call us, to email us, whether it be in favor of us getting behind this or opposed. I know that it takes a lot of time to engage and to be passionate about something. I would say that, as Mr. Hipple mentioned, this board is a very unique board in that we, just like with my husband, I don't always agree with everything he says, but we agree to disagree on some things, and we do here as well. But we do it in an agreeable way. And I would say that we do it without pointing fingers at people, because when we point fingers at one another, it creates those barriers that don't need to take place. And we have worked very hard to make sure that we don't do this here on this board. We get along. We don't always agree, but as Ms. Larson just said, however this works out this evening, we know that we will leave here being colleagues that are able to work with one another. Now, I would agree that this, for me, is not a local issue. I would encourage all of those who have taken the time to contact us, to use that time and energy to contact your state legislators and your federal legislators. This is where this dog is going to be fought. So I would encourage everybody to go that route and use your same passions to take it to that level. If I did not feel that I had equal rights, I would never have been able to run for office and win. I worked hard. I had a lot of women working with me and a lot of men working with me, and because of that, I was able to win. And if I did not feel that I had the right to do that, I probably never would have taken on the task to begin with. That said, I don't feel like this should be on our legislative agenda because I feel like that speaks, if that resolution passes, it speaks for us as a board as a whole. And I do not support this because of I feel like the only winners that are going to be a part of this are, God love you, lawyers who are going to be fighting these fights in courtrooms, because this is going to be a fight that's going to be out there no matter whether you think that the churches will be affected or not. We don't know that. We're not legalese. It could very well. So I would say don't cut that fight off until you know that that's for sure. That could very well affect people. It could affect all different realms of civilization as we know it. So and I would appreciate it if you would be kind enough to not laugh when I speak, because we have listened to a lot of other folks this evening, whether we agree or not, and that's the point I've been making all along, is that we do this civilly and we do this with respect. So that said, I will not be supporting this evening, and I would be inclined to go along with what Mr. Hipple said, in that if whomever agrees, disagree, we can contact our legislators ourselves, just like we did the previous Senate bill, because I particularly do not want my constituents represented as somebody who may be against this, because I will be voting against it. So I think it should be an individual thing rather than taking it on as a board. So I would encourage everyone to please maintain your kindness and your respect as we go through this next political season, because laughing at one another, no matter what people's opinions are, is not necessarily advantageous to civil discourse. That's something like we said, we worked very hard to achieve that here. We get recognized by the locality as a whole from real estate people and schools and business people all over. It's so refreshing, and by employees, it's so refreshing to see a board who doesn't always agree on issues work so well together. It's very refreshing, and it is for us as colleagues. So thank you very much. I appreciate you coming out this evening.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I will like to echo on behalf of all of my fellow board members here. We have had an opportunity to listen to you, and we try to do so with great respect, and we try to listen, and we try not to make an emotional judgment on it. And sometimes I think it's very important that our citizens in the audience do the same, return the courtesy, because I do believe that whether we disagree on certain things, that the effectiveness of our board is totally dependent upon our ability to get along and work with each other, even when especially when we don't agree. Especially when we don't agree. So I will thank my fellow board members. I will say one thing. Regardless of how we vote tonight, the lawyers are still going to win. I'd like to look at this as an opportunity to express an opinion. And the decision will not be made by us, it will be made by others. There is legislation already pending in the House. This is merely adding it to our agenda that we would be in support of that legislation. Whether or not that legislation is ultimately successful will depend upon the outcome of that deliberative body and the input of people across the Commonwealth on both sides of the issue, both as individuals and as local governments. Some of the local governments have already taken this step that we're contemplating doing this evening. I don't think we should look at this as an issue of one side wins and the other side loses. This is one where you express your opinion, and the fact that we got to express our opinion and the fact that it will then go on to the next level is a win for everyone. And I would tell you that I agree with my fellow board members. The next step at this point is, if you feel passionately about this issue, one way or the other, the next level is where you need to become involved. And you need to let your legislative people know how you feel about this. This is democracy in action. I will not make any judgments about how legal challenges might come out. My stance on it is that I think that I have to look at it from the point of view of what I think is right for the majority of our citizens. And a majority of our citizens are women. And so I'll be supporting it this evening. Does any board member wish to have any additional time to speak? Okay. Stevens.
Ms. Sadler?
No.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
No.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. We will now move to another amendment to the legislative agenda, this one to support the addition of alpacas within the state code definition of livestock. Yeah.
Clear the room.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to leave, please do so quietly so we can move on to the next part of the meeting. Thank you.
Here we go.
Mr. Kinsman, if you would like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adam Kinsman, County Attorney, one of the winning attorneys. I'm here tonight seeking equal rights for alpacas. Based on a recent court case that my office had, it was discovered that the definition of livestock in the Virginia Code includes the animals of the genus Llama, and there has been some recent scientific discovery over the past 20 years. It was originally thought that alpacas came from the genus Llama. They have since decided that they come from the Vicugna pacos genus. In short, this basic...
The what?
Vicugna pacos. I am no scientist.
I think that was a song in The Lion King.
Yes.
I was going to say Hakuna Matata.
What I can tell you is it made us lose the case. Because the alpaca is not included in that definition of livestock, the Virginia Code's broad protection against livestock being attacked from other animals is not extended to alpacas. We have a number of folks in the county that own alpacas, and in fact an alpaca farm. So this was suggested by Supervisor Hipple at your January 2nd, 2019 meeting, brought before you a resolution that would amend our agenda to basically add alpacas to the definition of livestock in the Virginia Code. Happy to answer any questions.
The only question I had was, have we looked at other animals that we might, I know it's hard to, because we got a lot of animals, I'm sure, but are you just going to see as they come up, or have you looked at any other farm animals that we might have here that might not be, they might fall under a different scientific?
We've not.
Okay.
This one sort of caught us off guard.
Okay, so just as they come.
Yeah, this was a change in really the scientific definition over the past 20 years. I think everybody thought alpacas were included in that, and we found out through court that they weren't. The definition of livestock, I'll note, is really, really broad, and generally includes most everything that you would have to harvest them for fur or meat or eggs, any of those products, but people tend to keep alpacas as pets as well. So this would just automatically add them without having to have the burden of proof that you're using them for an animal product.
Thank you.
And let the general public know that this came about from a court case that I attended, and I watched two dogs viciously attack my brother's animals. And if I hadn't have been there, they would have more than likely would have killed those animals that day. I stopped the attack. No one else was at the property, and I stopped the attack and called the dog warden. I also called dispatch and called the police as far as to have them dispatched. It wasn't until we got to court that we found out that there was this technicality, even though they're livestock on a farm, that an animal has to come from quite a ways away, broke out of their enclosure, both of them, and came in there, and I watched the attack as I just happened to be on the property at that time. And I've got video of it and showed it in the court. And they started with the attack on the donkeys, and then they moved from there because the donkeys are a lot stronger, and they'll try to kill them. And so they figured, okay, let's go to the alpacas, and they're more a kinder animal, and they'll run and they'll flee. And they took them all the way down and had them on the throat and was killing the animal when I was throwing rocks and sticks at them, because once dogs start to attack, you definitely don't want to get in that scenario, because then they can turn their attention on you. You want to try with the dog to try to get their attention away from what they're doing without you being the next object. So even after going through court and going through 2 videos of this, the judge then decided that there was a technicality of how the animal is considered, and that's how the 2 dogs in question were turned back to their owner, and he paid the vet bills and all. He seems like a very decent man, not saying anything, just the dogs, and the dogs went back into the neighborhood that they're in now. And my worry is that those dogs could get out, come back to the same place and attack the animals again, or attack something else, because now they're in a different state of mind. They got away with it, and now they're in a different state of mind. So the reason I wanted this brought forward is not only protect the animals, but also protect anything else that if this happens again to anyone else, that the animals can be dispatched rather than allowing them back into a neighborhood that they can possibly dig out and get out. So that's what I was worried about as far as the citizens and the community and your animals or your cat or your dog or your children or grandchildren. You never know. So, but
to the forefront as well, because we do have other farmers in the area who do have alpacas, and I think it would be very helpful and protective for their farm animals as well. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Will. And that was my biggest worry is to make sure that, you know, if there's a technicality, and I don't blame the judge for the technicality, that law is the law. And but after watching the attack and watching what happened and hearing the animals screaming while they're being drugged down, it's you know, something I don't want to see again, and something I don't want to happen to any of my neighbors out there as well. So that's why we're bringing it forward. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for Adam or any other comment?
No.
Yeah, I'll look forward to the board for a motion.
Motion for approval.
Okay. Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We are now down to board requests and directives.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm first now. John, you used to be first, now I get to take your spot. You can save yours for the end. That's right. Can you give me yours?
Share.
I don't have a whole lot. Of course, we're slowed down a little bit on the transportation stuff because we're in a little bit of pause till VDOT catches up with us as far as the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, but that's still moving forward. We're looking at signing contracts in March on that and bringing that forward. So the interstates are running real well. We're in phase 3 now, so that's doing pretty good as far as up our way. So you'll see more congestion and that sort of thing as we go through that. And that's all I've got to report right now until we go through our next meetings. Thank you.
So I have had a citizen who has been contacting me for several months now regarding cell phone coverage out on Neckaland Road. John, I don't know if you've ever heard any, but it's very spotty. So many people do not have home phones as much as they used to, and so the citizen that brought it forward was worried about the safety issue. And I know in speaking with Mr. Holt, at one point there had been an application for a cell phone tower, but by a provider, but I don't think one has ever come. So I was just wondering if you could follow up. The citizen had sent me an email recently to see if we had heard any more. So I was hoping that you might be able to find out about that. I think he's tried with Verizon and other carriers and not gotten much. I did see where VDOT had been using social media to have citizens report potholes at 800 4FOR Road, ROAD. There are several potholes out there because of the weather. And if Sunday's weather forecast holds true, there may be more. So I just urge citizens to let VDOT know if there are potholes in your area. The other thing I wanted to bring up is on January 24th at 6 o'clock at Jamestown High School. I will be holding a community forum with Rossi Carroll and Mr. Stevens. Will you be attending?
Yes,
and
both of us will be there.
Jason? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically what we are going to be talking about that evening is the intersection of Route 5 in Centerville and Green Springs and Route 5. This is an intersection in my district that I probably get calls about daily, if not more than 1, 2. There's been growing concern for a very long time, but thanks to county staff, we've been able to get this community forum together where I think we're going to hear some options, get input from citizens on what they would like to see done there, and some information shared as well. We're limited in that area with what we're able to do. So VDOT will be able to share that. So, and I'm hoping that county staff is working on communication ways that we can get the word out to people in that area. I've been trying my best, but Jason's a little busy. I hope you're going to announce that we have okay. Oh, sorry, I looked the wrong way. I'm used to going this way. Sorry.
Can't be on social media, though.
What?
Can't be on social media.
That's right.
The announcement.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mom's the word.
We good?
I'm done. Yes.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Stevens, could we make sure that staff can provide us with updates regarding the drainage issue on Rochambeau that Mr. Fowler spoke about this evening? I know it's been an ongoing issue out there. I appreciate it. And I'd like to take the opportunity to send out a thank you to Mr. Heath Richardson. He has served on the Planning Commission for the past several years, representing the Stonehouse District. His term has come to an end, and he's decided to spend time doing other things between job and family and Boy Scouts and those sorts of things. He's decided to set that aside. So I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you, Mr. Richardson, for the thoughtful and professional way that you've conducted yourself leading the Planning Commission and as a representative to the Stonehouse District. So we appreciate your willingness to continue to be engaged and keep us informed on things, especially up our end of the county. And I'd just like to say well done and thank you very much. So appreciate all you've done for us. That's all I have.
Okay, great. I had a couple of things. One extends back to December, and I just wanted to express my appreciation to Supervisor Larson, who represented the board at a ceremony on December 21st, recognizing National Homelessness Memorial Day, Homeless Persons Memorial Day, and it was a very moving ceremony and highlighted the importance of addressing issues of homelessness. And thank you very much for that. While I'm on that topic, let me just express in our first public meeting, our first formal meeting since the gavel has passed, my appreciation, I'm sure my colleagues' appreciation for the excellent job that you did last year as our chair. I think it was a very productive and successful year, and appreciate all the hard work you put in. I'm sure you're looking forward to having a little bit freer time. And to congratulate Mr. Eisenhower and Mr. Hippel on taking over the leadership of the board. And I think you look forward to a very successful year this year. I also wanted to mention that today Supervisor Larson, Mr. Stevens and I attended the VML VACO Finance Forum, which was very informative, provided us with lots of tables, charts, and graphs about what's going on with the state budget and state revenues and expenditures, which we'll share with other board members. But the interesting thing is there are going to be some very significant decisions made this year in the legislative session because there are revenues that are in excess of what we would normally anticipate, and how those dollars are allocated will be quite important. We know we have lots of needs, and the state has lots of needs, and citizens have expectations, and so it'll be an interesting thing to watch unfold. Finally, in terms of an actual request or directive to staff, I received an email with, and then several emails with pictures attached of Moses Lane, which is in the Penniman Road area, Government Drive area. Moses Lane recently has been the site of the construction of a number of homes through Habitat for Humanity. The roadway there is now in a situation where I believe it is primarily a gravel road that goes in front of those new homes. And I would like staff to take a look at the street to see whether it can be evaluated for the possible inclusion in the state system, or if it is in the state system, what we can do to get the quality of the road improved there. And I think that's it. Just one last thing. I did want to make sure that Mr. Kinsman understood that he is a local government attorney, so he should not expect to profit from anything that's happened.
Okay, thank you. I would like to also extend my sincere thanks to Mr. Heath Richardson for his service on the Planning Commission. I've dealt with him for quite a while, and he is truly a quality young man, and we were very fortunate to have serving our community. He will be sorely missed, and I do know that he is very active with the Boy Scouts, and I have contact with him through the Sons of the American Revolution, and he does a lot for our community. So thank you to Mr. Richardson. I'd like to thank some of our speakers this evening. Let me see. I guess the first thing I'd like to do is to ask if we could do some research into naming that bridge for Mr. Richardson.
Yes, sir.
That I think is something that we could probably take a look at. I know we do that periodically. I think Mr. Richardson's contributions to our community are substantial. He has definitely been one of the people who helped shape our community into what it is today, and I know he will be missed. And I do thank his family for all he has done for our community. Mr. Henderson, if you would, I know that the issue of citizen participation is a constant issue, and I would ask the board, maybe we can take a look at what we want to do, but I think it requires a coordinated effort amongst the board to decide the best way to try to increase citizen participation to as much as we can. Last item I have is the board retreat. We had a list of subjects that went out. Right now we have the Tourism Council, our land preservation efforts, and the Economic Development Authority on our thing. Wanted to make sure you had an opportunity if you wanted to add anything or expand on it. I'll open it up for anybody who wishes to comment on that.
Sure, thanks. And as far, I had asked Mr. Hipple regarding the bridge. He was going to check because I thought, and maybe Mr. Henderson is talking about another bridge, but I thought the bridge he was referencing was already named after somebody, Mr. Hornsby.
Right.
So
the one for Mr. Hornsby is at Long Hill over 199. He's talking Old Town. By the fire
further.
station.
Okay.
At 199. I do not believe that has been named.
Okay. So I had spoken with Mr. Stevens today to I would like to know where we are with communications. We restructured communication department a few years ago and just was looking for an update. And if he was ready to share his vision, which he may not be, but an update on when he would be able to share his vision for the communications department.
And Mr. Chairman, I think I'd be happy to talk about that, but maybe wait to the retreat and make sure I've vetted
That's
that
what
with
I mean.
staff well and bring it. Okay,
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be ready by retreat.
He was
Yes,
just
ma'am.
asking for what
Yes,
we wanted
ma'am.
to add to the retreat.
Okay. I think we can add that. What we'll do is I'll have them provide an update of the issues and how we'll plan to attack them. Looks like we'll have about 30 minutes for each one. So I'd like to have staff prepare a short presentation, if you will, and it may involve, I know, like with the Tourism Council, Ms. Larson, that you might be able to help guide the discussion on that since you sit on that board for us, so that we can have a better understanding of where we are on all that. I do want to thank staff. They put out a list, I hope you all got it, of subjects, and some of them have already been scheduled for our work sessions throughout the year. Did you get that one? I'll make sure everybody gets it. It's really important because, there are certain things that have already fallen in. What we were concerned about was putting out a work schedule, a list that then is constantly changing. So what staff has done is done an exhaustive list of the things that we could be considering at work sessions, and then the ones that have already been nailed down for particular meetings have been listed for those months. So if you have, I'll make sure, if you haven't gotten that, I'll make sure everybody gets that later. Please look it over and make sure that you give me some feedback on what you would like to see, or if there are any additions that you would like to see to that. That's a working document, if you will, for the board that we can work on as we go forward. And I will leave to the county administrator the announcement from staff.
Make sure I get the name right. I appreciate that.
I've got it right here.
Adam can tell you what it is.
Chair of Board, a couple items to update you on, and then I will come back to that one. I do want to mention the holidays have moved through. We are accepting Christmas trees and leaf disposal. So through January 31st, James City County residents can recycle their Christmas trees free of charge at any county convenience center during our normal operating hours. I hope the community knows that, but we are doing that through January 31st. The decorations and tree stands should be removed prior to bringing to us. And then for leaves, county residents may drop off leaves free of charge January 7th through the 20th at our Jolly Pond Convenience Center at 1204 Jolly Pond Road. Again, it's convenience center hours, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and leaves will only be accepted in clear bags no larger than 40 gallons or less. So through January 7th to the 20th for the leaves. Also, we have previously offered a police citizen academy. We are doing that again and taking applications for that. Our police department has offered that to local community, the opportunity to get an inside look at the operation and function of police procedures since 1994. The classes offer an overview of the department's philosophy, each division, and other areas of police work, and the police department is currently accepting applications for the session beginning February 13. Applications can be accessed on our website, and all applicants must undergo a criminal background check before being admitted to the program. So please contact Master Police Officer Alan McDowell. Again, at Master Police Officer Alan McDowell at 757-603-6026, 757-603-6026, with any questions they may have about the program. And then our final comment, or at least my final comment this evening, is we have Jason Purse, our Assistant County Administrator, is the proud father of a new little boy today. I'll make up the name, so let me get back before I do that. But I do want to recognize Jason, his efforts, and then congratulate he and his wife, Lindsay, on the birth of a new son.
Right here.
You've got my name? Calvin Maxwell Purse. So again, do want to congratulate him on that, and we'll see him and his new one soon, I'm sure. So that's all I have.
If I could, since one thing of several that we do very well, and Ms. Stallman does the podcast, and this week, and she just tweeted this out today, that our county administrator is her guest, and one thing that you talk about is debris collection and the budget and military, I don't know it, and more. So those podcasts are really interesting, and so I urge people to talk about those, to listen to it and talk about it. And share it. Yeah, all that.
And tweet it.
Yeah, and tweet it.
Okay, that moves us on to a closed session, but I would look to the board to see if you feel we can do this nomination in open session without having to go in closed session. Okay, with the concurrence of the board?
That's fine. I have somebody.
Okay, that's right. Since this nomination is for the Stonehouse seat on the Planning Commission, we will look to the Stonehouse representative.
I would like us to consider appointing Ms. Odessa Dowdy. She is a resident out in Wellington, has served on the HOA board out there, is very interested in serving the community, and is anxious to participate in the process. So that would be who I would recommend.
And are you, my understanding was you were planning to nominate her for a one-year term, so to
Correct.
bring that
Thank
into
you. Yeah, so
cycle.
she has agreed with that. We would be doing this for a one-year term, and in that way it would get the Planning Commission and the Stonehouse District, everybody all lined up together. So yes, and she is very amenable to that. So.
Thank you, because that's something we've been attempting to do for a long time, is to align all of those appointments. So, okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion from the board? Stevens?
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right, I will take a motion to adjourn until 2 p.m. on January 22nd, 2019 for the board retreat in the work session room at the James City County Government Center.
So moved.
Larson?
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We are adjourned.